My name is Lauren, I'm 28, and 3 days ago, I married Jason, my boyfriend of 5 years. It should have been the happiest day of my life, but my younger sister Megan, 26, tried her best to steal the spotlight, as she always does. This time, though, I saw it coming and stayed 2 steps ahead of her. It all started about a week before the wedding. I received a call from the baker handling our wedding cake. She told me Megan had contacted her, requesting a second cake for the wedding day. This cake wasn't for me, the bride, but for Megan to announce her pregnancy. The baker was suspicious because Megan claimed I had asked her to make this cake and directed her to Megan for further instructions. When the baker asked questions, Megan tried to bribe her, offering to pay double to keep it a secret. Thankfully, the baker had morals and informed me immediately. At first, I was furious. It was typical Megan, always needing to be the center of attention. I considered uninviting her but decided against it. This was my day, and I wasn't going to let her antics overshadow it. Instead, I decided to turn the tables on her. I confided in Jason, who was just as annoyed but fully supportive of my plan. We both agreed it was better to handle this with a strategy rather than outright confrontation. Megan might have thought she was being clever, but she wasn't ready for what I had in store. On the wedding day, everything went beautifully during the ceremony. Jason and I were glowing with happiness as we exchanged vows, and our friends and family celebrated with us. Afterward, we transitioned to the reception, where the big cake-cutting moment was supposed to be the highlight. And then, Megan made her move. She interrupted just as Jason and I were about to cut the cake. Standing up with an air of smug self-importance, she declared, "I have a special announcement." Before I could say anything, she wheeled out her own cake. The words, "Congratulations on the baby," were scrawled across it in bright icing. Guests gasped, and Megan's face radiated triumph as our parents jumped up to congratulate her and her husband, Adam. For a moment, it was like the wedding didn't exist. All the attention shifted to her. My parents were crying tears of joy, embracing her and gushing about how proud they were. Even some of my friends and family members went over to congratulate her. But not Jason or me. We stayed calm because this was exactly what we had prepared for. Once Megan's announcement had stolen enough of the spotlight, she turned to me with a fake smile and said, "Now let's get back to your wedding." That was my cue. Smiling sweetly, I said, "Oh, Megan, I'm so happy for you. But wait, someone very important isn't here yet. We can't celebrate properly without them." Everyone looked confused. Jason and I shared a knowing glance, and that's when I nodded toward the entrance. In walked Jared. Jared, 27, is Megan's ex-boyfriend. They dated before she married Adam, and from what I'd pieced together, their relationship had been rocky. While Megan was still living with Jared, she started seeing Adam. Based on the timeline, there had definitely been overlap between the two relationships. Jared knew about it, but never confronted her. Megan had strung him along until she was sure things with Adam were solid. When I reached out to Jared before the wedding, I wasn't sure how he'd react to my plan. At first he was hesitant, but when I told him Megan was pregnant and planning to announce it at my wedding, something in him shifted. He felt betrayed. Megan had kept in touch with him sporadically over the years, giving him false hope while being married to Adam. He agreed to show up. As Jared walked in, the room fell silent. Megan's smile disappeared in an instant. Jared made a beeline for her, his expression unreadable. He congratulated her on the pregnancy, then turned to Adam and said, "It's so sweet of you to let her stay in touch with me all these years, even after she cheated on both of us." The color drained from Adam's face. He stared at Megan, stunned. "What is he talking about?" he demanded. Megan stammered, trying to explain, but Jared didn't stick around. He turned to Jason and me, thanked us for inviting him, and left. The room exploded into chaos. Adam was furious, yelling at Megan in front of everyone. She tried to deny everything, but Jared had dropped a bombshell she couldn't talk her way out of. Adam stormed out, leaving Megan humiliated. My parents, of course, turned their anger on me. They accused me of ruining Megan's special moment and called me petty for bringing Jared into the situation. I stood my ground, though. If Megan hadn't tried to hijack my wedding, none of this would have happened, I told them. She made her bed. Now she has to lie in it. Some guests left in solidarity with my parents, but many stayed to celebrate with Jason and me. The rest of the evening went off without a hitch, and for the first time that day, I felt like the focus was back where it belonged, on my wedding dot. As Jason and I danced that night, I couldn't help but feel relieved. Megan's plan to steal my day had backfired spectacularly. Little did I know, the fallout was only beginning. The morning after the wedding, Jason and I were still riding the high of a mostly successful day. We sat together at our kitchen table, sipping coffee and replaying the night's events. I could tell Jason was proud of how we'd handled Megan's antics, but I also knew the storm wasn't over. I didn't have to wait long. By mid-morning, my parents showed up at our doorstep unannounced. I wasn't surprised. They hadn't exactly left the wedding in good spirits. I debated whether or not to let them in, but figured it was better to face whatever they had to say and get it over with. Jason, ever the supportive husband, stayed close but let me take the lead. As soon as my parents walked in, my mom launched into a lecture. "Lauren," she began, her voice dripping with disappointment, "what you did yesterday was completely out of line. You embarrassed your sister in front of everyone, and now her marriage is falling apart because of you." I took a deep breath, trying to keep calm. "Mom, Megan brought this on herself. She tried to make my wedding all about her. I wasn't going to let her get away with it." "She didn't mean any harm," my dad chimed in. "She was just excited to share her news with the family. You turned it into a spectacle." "Are you serious?" I shot back. "She hijacked my day to announce her pregnancy, and let's not forget, she's been lying to Adam this whole time. All I did was make sure the truth came out. If anyone ruined her marriage, it's Megan, not me." But my parents weren't having it. They insisted Megan was the victim here, painting her as some innocent, well-meaning little sister who'd been blindsided by my vindictive actions. Then my mom hit me with the ultimatum. "If you don't apologize to Megan and Adam," she said, her tone icy, "and tell them this was all a misunderstanding, that Jared only showed up as a joke, you can consider yourself cut off from this family. We'll never speak to you again." I stared at her, stunned. "You can't be serious." "Oh, we're serious," my dad added. "You owe your sister an apology. She's pregnant, Lauren. She needs support right now, not more stress." I couldn't help but laugh at how ridiculous they sounded. "You really think I'm going to apologize for exposing the truth? Megan cheated on Jared with Adam, then kept Jared in her life for years while she was married. And now you want me to pretend none of that happened?" "It doesn't matter," my mom snapped. "What matters is family. And right now your sister needs you. She's struggling because of what you did." "Well," I said, crossing my arms, "if she's struggling, maybe she should take a long, hard look at her choices instead of blaming me for the consequences. I'm not apologizing. And if you can't accept that, the door's right there." My parents exploded. They accused me of being selfish, petty, and vindictive. They said I was tearing the family apart and that my actions reflected badly on all of us, not just Megan. "Do you even care about this family?" my mom shouted. "Honestly," I said, meeting her glare, "right now, no, because this family has always cared more about Megan than me. She's your golden child and I'm the afterthought. Well, guess what? I'm done playing second fiddle to her. That was the last straw." My mom stormed out, dragging my dad with her. Jason shut the door behind them and turned to me, his face a mix of concern and pride. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, exhaling deeply. I knew they'd react like this. It still sucks, but I'm not going to let them guilt me into apologizing for something I'm not sorry for. Jason nodded, wrapping an arm around me. "You did the right thing, Lauren. Megan needed to be called out, and if your parents can't see that, that's on them." Over the next few days, things escalated. My parents made good on their threat to cut me off. They blocked me on every platform, and I heard through mutual relatives that they were telling anyone who'd listen how cruel and vindictive I'd been to Megan. Some family members took their side, sending me messages about how I'd ruined my sister's life and how I should be ashamed of myself. Others, thankfully, supported me, saying Megan had gotten exactly what she deserved. Megan, of course, was the loudest voice of all. She called me, crying and yelling, blaming me for Adam moving out and filing for divorce. She accused me of destroying her life, claiming that if I hadn't brought Jared to the wedding, none of this would have happened. "You're the reason my baby won't have a father," she screamed over the phone. "Megan," I said, keeping my voice steady, "you're the reason Adam is leaving, not me. You lied to him. You cheated on Jared. You played both of them and now it's all catching up to you. Maybe it's time to take some responsibility for once." She hung up on me. The breaking point came when Megan demanded that I pay for her divorce and medical expenses. Yes, you read that right. She actually thought I should foot the bill for her lawyer, court fees, and pregnancy-related costs, because in her twisted logic, I was responsible for her predicament. When she made this demand, I couldn't help but laugh. "Megan, you're unbelievable," I said. "You ruin your own life and now you want me to pay for it? Absolutely not. This is your mess, not mine." She didn't take it well, of course. She called me every name in the book and vowed to make my life as miserable as hers. Through it all, Jason was my rock. He kept reminding me that we'd done the right thing and that Megan and my parents' reactions were proof of how entitled and toxic they were. As the days went on, I started to feel lighter. The truth was out, and while it had caused chaos, it had also set me free. I wasn't going to let Megan or anyone else control me anymore. After my parents stormed out of my house, I thought I'd finally have some peace. But with Megan involved, peace was never an option. The fallout from the wedding and her exposed lies kept escalating, dragging more people into the mess. A few days later, I got a text from Jared. "She reached out to me," he wrote. "She wants to meet." I immediately felt a pang of dread. Megan was up to something, she always was. I replied, "What does she want?" "She didn't say," Jared responded, "but I'm guessing it's not good. I'll let you know what happens." I didn't hear from him again until the next evening. Jared called, his voice a mix of frustration and resignation. He told me Megan had set up a meeting at a cafe and invited him under the guise of wanting closure. When he arrived, though, it wasn't just Megan waiting for him, it was Adam, too. Apparently, the moment Jared walked in, Adam pounced, accusing him of trying to ruin their marriage. Jared tried to explain that he hadn't reached out to Megan, that she had been the one to keep contacting him, but Adam wasn't having it. "He was yelling at me like I'd been chasing her all this time," Jared said, sounding exhausted. "But I came prepared. I showed him all the texts. Every single one. They proved she was the one reaching out, not me." I couldn't help but feel proud of Jared for standing his ground. "What did Adam say?" I asked. "He didn't say much after that," Jared admitted. "He looked furious, but not at me. At her. I left before it got any worse." As Jared recounted the scene, I couldn't stop thinking about how Megan always managed to dig herself deeper into trouble. It was like she couldn't help herself. The next morning, Megan's true nature reared its ugly head again. She sent me a series of angry texts, blaming me for the confrontation with Jared and Adam. "This is all your fault," she wrote. "You're ruining my life." I stared at my phone, amazed at her audacity. Instead of taking responsibility for her actions, she was doubling down on the blame game. "Megan," I replied, "you ruined your own life when you cheated on Jared and lied to Adam. Stop blaming everyone else for your choices." She didn't respond, but I knew this wasn't the end. Sure enough, a few days later, she pulled her most desperate stunt yet. A man claiming to be someone I had cheated on Jason with messaged my husband on social media. The message was laughable, full of vague accusations and no evidence. Jason, being the rational and loyal man he is, didn't believe a word of it. "Nice try," he said, showing me the message. "This guy couldn't even remember your name correctly. Did Megan seriously think this would work?" We blocked the guy immediately, but the sheer pettiness of the attempt left me stunned. Megan was flailing, trying anything to take the heat off herself. Meanwhile, my parents were still hard at work defending Megan's honor. My mom took to Facebook, posting a long dramatic message about how hard it is to be a mother and how some daughters are ungrateful and heartless. The post painted Megan as the golden child who could do no wrong, and me as the bitter, jealous sister who had sabotaged her out of spite. At first I was angry. How dare she lie like that? But then something amazing happened. Relatives who knew the truth started commenting, calling her out for her blatant favoritism and hypocrisy. "Aunt Karen wasn't wrong when she said you treated Lauren like an afterthought her whole life," one comment read. "Funny how Megan always got everything handed to her, but Lauren had to fight for scraps," another said. I couldn't help but laugh as my mom tried, and failed, to defend herself. Her post had backfired spectacularly, exposing her bias to the entire family. By this point, Jason and I were fully prepared to cut ties with anyone who sided with Megan. I was done trying to win over people who refused to see the truth. The family members who supported me stuck around, reassuring me that I had done the right thing by standing up for myself. One of them even said, "It's about time someone held Megan accountable. She's been spoiled for too long." I couldn't agree more. A few days later, Jared posted screenshots of his conversations with Megan on social media. The messages clearly showed her reaching out to him repeatedly over the years, even after marrying Adam. The post went viral within our extended family. People who had been on Megan's side started turning against her, realizing she had been lying to everyone all along. Megan, predictably, went into damage control mode. She accused Jared of invading her privacy and spreading lies. But the proof was undeniable, and no one believed her. Even my parents couldn't spin this one in her favor. Instead, they tried to shift the blame back to me, claiming I had orchestrated everything to make Megan look bad. But by now, most people weren't buying their excuses. As the days passed, Jason and I focused on moving forward. We were determined not to let Megan or my parents ruin our newlywed bliss. "We did the right thing," Jason reminded me one night as we cuddled on the couch. "Megan needed to be exposed. Now she has to face the consequences." I nodded, feeling a sense of closure. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally free from Megan's shadow. As much as Jason and I tried to move on, Megan and my parents were relentless. The tension between us had reached a boiling point, and it was clear there was no going back. Still, I didn't expect them to show up at my house again so soon after our last explosive encounter. 3 days after Jared's post went viral, my parents arrived unannounced. I wasn't in the mood for their dramatics, but I figured if they were here, it must be serious. Jason and I exchanged a look, and he nodded for me to handle it. When I opened the door, my mom didn't waste a second. "We need to talk," she said, her face a mixture of anger and desperation. I stepped aside, letting them in. "What now?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. My dad started first, his voice unusually calm. "Lauren, this has gone too far. Megan's marriage is over. Adam filed for divorce yesterday." I didn't respond right away. Part of me felt sorry for Megan, pregnant, alone, and facing the fallout of her own decisions. But another part of me felt like this was the natural consequence of her actions. She had lied, manipulated, and cheated. What did she expect? She did that to herself, I finally said. "She's pregnant," my mom snapped, her tone sharp. "And now she has no idea how she's going to raise this baby on her own. You ruined everything by dragging Jared into this. If you just left it alone, none of this would have happened." "Are you serious right now?" I said, my voice rising. "Megan ruined her own life. She cheated on Jared, then cheated on Adam, and kept lying to both of them for years. All I did was tell the truth. If anyone's to blame for her situation, it's her." "You didn't have to humiliate her," my dad argued. "You could have talked to her privately instead of creating a scene at your wedding." I scoffed. "And what would that have done? She would have denied everything like she always does. Megan never takes responsibility for anything, and you two always enable her." "We're not here to argue," my mom said, though her voice suggested otherwise. "We're here because Megan needs help. She doesn't have the resources to deal with this divorce and the baby. She's asked us to talk to you about covering her legal and medical expenses." I blinked, stunned by the audacity of their request. "You're kidding, right?" "We're not," my dad said firmly. "This is partly your fault, Lauren. If you hadn't involved Jared, Adam wouldn't have left her." I let out a bitter laugh. "Let me get this straight. You want me to pay for Megan's divorce and pregnancy because I told the truth? That's insane. I'm not giving her a dime." "She's your sister," my mom shouted. "And she's a grown woman who made her own choices," I shot back. "I'm not responsible for cleaning up her mess. If you care so much, why don't you pay for it?" "That's not the point," my dad yelled. "You're the one who escalated this situation. You need to fix it." "No," I said firmly. "Megan needs to fix her own life. I'm done bailing her out." The argument went on for another hour. My parents tried every tactic they could think of, guilt, anger, even tears, but I refused to budge. By the end of it, they were furious. "You've changed," my mom said, shaking her head in disappointment. "You've become cold and selfish. We don't even recognize you anymore. No, I said quietly. I finally stopped letting you walk all over me. There's a difference. My parents left after that, slamming the door behind them. Over the next few days, the backlash from Megan's camp intensified. She had apparently rallied a group of relatives to her side, and they wasted no time flooding my phone with messages. Some accused me of being heartless, while others demanded I apologize and make things right. But then something unexpected happened. Jared posted another update. This time, he included even more messages from Megan, proof that she had continued reaching out to him even after Adam had moved out. The post sent shockwaves through our extended family. People who had been defending Megan suddenly went silent. A few even reached out to me to apologize for taking her side. In the meantime, Megan wasn't taking her newfound infamy well. She tried to shift the narrative, accusing Jared of fabricating the messages and me of orchestrating a smear campaign against her. But her efforts backfired spectacularly. The more she tried to play the victim, the more people started to see through her lies. One of my cousins summed it up perfectly in a group chat. Megan's always been a drama queen. This time she just got caught. Through it all, Jason remained my anchor. He reminded me that I wasn't responsible for Megan's downfall, no matter how much my parents or anyone else tried to blame me. She made her bed, he said one night as we talked over dinner. Now she has to lie in it. I nodded, feeling a sense of clarity. For years, I'd let Megan and my parents manipulate me into feeling like I was the problem. But now, I saw the truth. Megan wasn't my responsibility. Her choices were hers alone, and it was time for her to face the consequences. As Jason and I prepared for our honeymoon, I felt a sense of peace. The lines had been drawn, and I knew where I stood. I wasn't going to let Megan or my parents drag me down anymore. Jason and I left for our honeymoon a few days later, eager to escape the chaos that had consumed our lives since the wedding. As the plane ascended into the sky, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. This was our time. No Megan, no parents, no drama. Just us. For the first few days, it felt like we'd left everything behind. We explored new places, indulged in good food, and soaked up every moment of being newlyweds. But even miles away, the shadows of the fallout still lingered. One evening, as Jason and I were relaxing in our hotel room, my phone buzzed with a message from Jared. He hadn't contacted me since the cafe showdown, so I was curious. "Allison texted me again," he wrote. Of course she did. Megan wasn't the type to let things go. Jared explained that Megan had asked to meet him, alone this time. She claimed she wanted to clear the air. Against his better judgment, he agreed, hoping it would be the final chapter in their saga. When they met, Megan apparently tried to spin the narrative in her favor. She said she had only kept in touch with Jared out of nostalgia and that he was blowing things out of proportion. She didn't apologize, Jared told me. She just kept making excuses like always. She even hinted that the baby might not be Adam's. I froze when I read that. It was one thing for Megan to play the victim, but this? It was a whole new level of manipulation. "What did you say?" I asked. "I told her I'm done with her games," Jared replied. "I said I'm moving on, and she needs to do the same." I couldn't help but feel proud of him. For years, Megan had kept Jared on a string, feeding him just enough attention to keep him around. But now, he was finally cutting the cord. Meanwhile, back home, Megan was facing the consequences of her actions head on. Adam had officially filed for divorce, and their split was anything but amicable. From what I heard through the grapevine, he was furious. Not just about the overlap with Jared, but also about Megan's ongoing dishonesty. The divorce wasn't the only issue. Megan's reputation within the family was in tatters. Jared's screenshots had painted a clear picture of her deceit, and even our parents couldn't shield her from the backlash. My mom, of course, tried to salvage the situation. She called relatives, trying to convince them that Jared's evidence had been doctored and that Megan was the real victim. But her efforts only made things worse. People were tired of the lies and favoritism. For once, Megan wasn't the center of admiration. She was the subject of whispers and judgment, and she hated it. When Jason and I returned from our honeymoon, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. I knew there would be more drama waiting for us, but I also felt stronger, ready to face whatever came my way. Sure enough, it didn't take long for my parents to make their next move. They showed up at our house unannounced again, this time with Megan in tow. I opened the door and there she was, visibly pregnant, her face a mix of anger and desperation. "What do you want?" I asked, crossing my arms. Megan didn't wait for an invitation. She pushed past me and marched into the living room, my parents trailing behind her. Jason, who had been in the kitchen, stepped into the room, his expression hardening when he saw them. "We need to talk," my mom said, her tone firm. I sighed, already exhausted by their presence. "Fine, talk." My parents launched into yet another guilt trip, blaming me for everything that had gone wrong in Megan's life. They claimed that I had destroyed her marriage, ruined her reputation, and left her struggling as a soon-to-be single mother. Megan, of course, played her part perfectly, sitting on the couch with a hand on her belly, tears in her eyes. "You've done enough damage, Lauren," my dad said. "The least you can do is help your sister now." "Help her?" I said, incredulous. "Help her with what?" "Her expenses," my mom said. "Her divorce, the baby, everything. She can't do it on her own." I let out a bitter laugh. "So you want me to pay for her mistakes? Absolutely not. She's your sister!" my mom shouted, her voice shaking with frustration. "And she's an adult who needs to take responsibility for her actions," I shot back. "I'm not her safety net." Megan finally spoke up, her voice trembling. "Do you hate me that much?" I turned to her, my patience wearing thin. "I don't hate you, Megan, but I'm done cleaning up your messes. You've spent your whole life taking from others, attention, money, love, and never giving anything back. It's time for you to grow up." Her tears vanished in an instant, replaced by anger. "You're such a selfish bitch," she spat. "You've always been jealous of me. This was all about making me look bad, wasn't it? You couldn't stand that I was happy, so you ruined everything." I stared at her, my jaw tightening. "You ruined your own life, Megan. I just stopped covering for you." Jason stepped forward then, his presence commanding. "I think it's time for you all to leave," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Lauren and I are done with this conversation. That was the last time I saw Megan or my parents in person. They left furious and defeated, and I haven't heard from them since. Over the next few weeks, things started to quiet down. Megan's divorce proceedings began, and she retreated into the shadows, no longer the attention-seeking star of the family. As for me, I felt lighter. Cutting ties with my toxic family wasn't easy, but it was necessary. For the first time in years, I felt like I could finally live my life without their constant drama dragging me down. Jason and I focused on building our future together, and I couldn't be happier. The experience had taught me a valuable lesson. Family isn't about blood. It's about the people who truly have your back. And as far as I'm concerned, Megan and my parents are no longer part of mine. Story 2. Thus, I found myself at the age of 24, right in the center of what seems to be the most significant family drama of my life. And to be honest, it's making me feel really anxious. My family portrays me as the antagonist in this situation, claiming that I only care about myself. However, it is just not the case. And in order to get through this mess, I'm really hoping to obtain some outside perspective. Let S go back in time to around 7 years ago. Imagine this. My dad, my stepmother, and my 32-year-old stepsister Anna periodically stop over to say hello. I had recently graduated from high school and was at a significant turning point in my life, attempting to determine my next course of action. My name was being called to college. I sensed it. I had been daydreaming about everything, the books, the new pals, and college life. I tell my dad that I envision myself going to college once we sit down and I lay my cards on the table. Dad didn't appear to mind. Actually, more than cool. He shockingly reveals that he has been saving money for my education fund. That golden ticket was all I needed, a letter of acceptance to college. A little while later, and presto, I received the mail. I'm on board. I'm ecstatic that I was accepted to one of the nearby community colleges. I dash home and burst through the door, eager to tell my dad the wonderful news. However, the scene I entered was completely different from what I had imagined. There, my stepmother interrupts me with this complete mood killer as soon as I tell her about college. As it happens, the funds designated for my college aspirations have been expended. Spent money on something they thought was more important. She is stating this as if it were unimportant, recommending that I put my ambitions on hold and wait another year. As I stand there, my exhilaration giving way to incredulity, I look to my dad in the vain hope that he has a different narrative. However, he appears to be going to walk the plank as he simply nods along. My heart fell. I mean, I was prepared to face the world, and all of a sudden, it seemed like someone had taken me by surprise. With all the bravery I possess, I ask my father directly, what could be so pressing that my future and college funds have to take a back seat? The situation became quite complex at that point. So there I was, talking to my dad in hopes of getting some sort of rational explanation for why my college cash had disappeared. What is it that he tells me? They gave my stepsister Anna all that money so she could improve our living arrangements. Like, really? Let me now paint you a portrait of Anna. She is from my stepmother's past journey before she started seeing my dad and Anna. She's always been a bit of a wild card. In fact, she was so out of the ordinary that she never even completed high school. In the present, Anna is 25 years old and about to give birth to twins, bringing her total number of children to 4. All of them have separate fathers who have essentially abandoned her. I was shocked to learn that they had paid for her using my college funds. I was unable to contain it. I told my dad up front that what they did was very unjust. Their justification? Anna is in fact expecting once again, this time twins. Additionally, she is a single mother of 3 children. They felt compelled to assist her in some way. As I stood there attempting to understand this reasoning, I asked my dad how they could have believed that this was more significant than my future and my aspirations to go college. In essence, he advised me to relax and simply reapply the following year. That made me pause and reflect. What happens if Anna chooses to have a second child the following year? Should I put my life on hold once more? I was even more irritated since Dad had nothing to say about that. I sobbed and let everything out that entire night because I felt so deceived. They didn't hesitate to put my ambitions and dreams on hold since they were so focused on making Anna's life a little easier. However, it wasn't enough to just sit there and feel sorry for me. I realized I needed to take action, especially considering how well I did on my final exams. It dawned on me then, why not search for universities that provide financial aid? I was resolved not to let this setback dissuade me. I began looking for any scholarship option I could come across. I was prepared to take charge of my own destiny and stop letting other people tell me what I could and couldn't do. That, quote, is the strategy then. I'm throwing myself into getting those scholarships and attending college. Whatever happens, guess what then? In fact, I received complete tuition at one of those prestigious universities located distant from my birthplace. Yes, a full scholarship that includes everything. My golden ticket out of there was that. Without giving it any thought, I packed my luggage and departed. I had had enough of people who didn't care about anybody else's future and thought it was fine to forsake mine. My dad made a few attempts to call me after I left, but I honestly told him to spend that time with his wonderful grandchildren instead. I was perfectly content to simply go on and avoid looking back. After 7 years, a lot has transpired. I spent 3 years working in the same state where I attended college after graduating and landing a very nice job. But pay attention to this. My employer chose to send me back to my home state to work in our main office only last month. Isn't, quote, that a complete circle? Last week I reorganized everything and moved back. This is when the exciting part begins. My stepmother calls me on my uncle's phone a few days after I returned since, yes, I blocked her number years ago. She surprises me with her revelation. Since she bounced, Anna's children, who are now 6, 9, 10, and 12 years old, have not seen her. My stepmother is attempting to drag me into their problem by claiming that they need my assistance with the children. I said, hold on. What? I take it you're kidding? She goes on to say that because my dad is retired and she is unemployed, they are having difficulty caring for the children and would want me to take them in. I quickly shut it down since I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She attempted to guilt-trip me by accusing me of being cold-hearted and evil for declining. But I retaliated by telling her that I was doing far better than her daughter, who abandoned her own children. I even questioned her. If the positions were reversed, Would you be asking Anna to look after children? And it was me who departed. After that, she didn't say much. That quote s the drama I'm now dealing with then. I feel like I've gone full circle after all that's occurred, but now they're attempting to drag me into their mess. But when it comes to family turmoil that attempts to drag you back into the chaos you've worked so hard to escape, I've learned a few things about maintaining my ground. Here quote s the thing then. I said to my stepmother, "Look, if my dad can spend my college money on Anna because he thinks he's being good, then that's his decision." Though Anna, who hasn't exactly been the mother of the year, decided she couldn't manage a full group of children, I'm not going to play Superman and take them in. I made it very evident that Anna had already attempted to destroy my future with her drama, and I had no intention of allowing her or her trash to ruin my life once more. To be honest, Anna most likely went off since she realized that having a large family would essentially eliminate her dating life. In an attempt to instill some common sense in my stepmother, I advised her to stop phoning me and instead look for Anna instead. I then wondered if this made me the antagonist in this tale. However, my dad calls me out of the blue, a few days later. He even apologized for essentially ignoring me for so long, without even checking in while I was struggling through college alone. I was a little taken aback when I heard him apologize and mean it. I thus made the decision to forgive him and move on from the past. Returning to the Anna story, she attempted to pull a quick one by bringing this man home and claiming that he was prepared to put a ring on it. This is where things get juicy though. Everything erupts as the kids get home, ecstatic to see their mother. Without giving it any thought, my stepmother tells the man that Anna is a mother. The man loses it and starts driving. Now, Anna and her mother are having a terrible argument, with Anna accusing her of ruining her romantic life, as well as my stepmother. She only wants Anna to return her children immediately and has no idea why she is receiving so much criticism. In the meantime, I'm planning to find my dad a peaceful place to live that is apart from this whole soap play. Given all the previous turmoil, I reasoned that it was the least I could do for him. I'm done with Anna and my stepmother. All I care about is making sure my dad has some serenity for once. Even if he wasn't flawless, he was still my father in the end. Am I the jerk then? A story to tell. Here's the deal then. I had been married to my wife for 10 years. Then she suddenly starts cheating. Imagine this. This Thursday afternoon is much like any other. I was attempting to get rid of the tension of the day by relaxing in bed next my wife after returning from work and taking a shower. She got up to get ready for her next shift and went into our master bedroom. I'm lying there with little on my mind, browsing around TikTok, when I received this SMS from an unknown number. Using my name and everything, the message asks whether I am who I say I am. Yeah, that's me, I think. They then re-ask to make sure they have my entire name correct. They told me they were truly sorry, but they also had to tell me that my wife had been cheating on me and they had text evidence to support their claims. I can attest to that. This individual emails me screenshots of discussions in which my wife is discussing with someone how she has a coworker that is unable to control his hands. She quotes, making jokes, claiming to have produced a little monster, and stating that she would never date a coworker, especially a married one. Then again, oops, it turns out that she has been boasting to a random guy about having an affair. In these texts, she tells this guy that she may have pursued things further if they lived closer. So, yes, I was utterly devastated. We've been together for 10 years and married for 9. Together, we have created this entire existence and had 3 wonderful children. I simply lost it when I read those sentences. Trying to comprehend how all we had created was simply collapsing left me in a state of full emotional collapse. I thus concluded that I couldn't ignore this. I had to be honest with her about it. I explained everything and asked her to come outside so we could talk. Her initial response? Complete rejection. She's saying that you're crazy. That is not something I would ever do. However, I was prepared. I informed her that it was time for her to be honest, since I had the screenshots and the evidence. She has a certain expression when she's caught telling a huge fat lie, She appeared to be wearing a Halloween mask at that very moment, based on the messages I saw. After confessing to physically playing about with one person, she engaged in some flirtatious behavior with another. She would not go any farther than that. But if she's admitting to that, what more is there, I wonder in my mind? Is she too ashamed to reveal any more secrets? I've always made it very apparent to her and to myself that infidelity is unacceptable. I used to say that if it ever occurred, I would dump her in a heartbeat. But now that I'm in the thick of things, it's far more difficult than I ever imagined. She is my spouse. I accepted those vows with all my heart. If only I could have faith that she was genuinely remorseful and that this would never happen again, I'd be open to pardoning. However, how can I? There is no longer any trust. It seems difficult to believe anything she says these days until we try marriage therapy. I've kind of put a stop on making any big decisions. If I'm being really honest with myself, I'm not quite sure if this is the proper course of action, but I'm leaning toward it mostly for the sake of our children. That simply blows my mind. What could possibly make someone who professes their love for you do anything like this? She has been fulfilling all of my requests and checking all the boxes ever since everything came out. However, I'm left wondering if that will ever be sufficient to mend things. You see, I'm not the kind to throw my relationship in the trash without giving it any consideration. Not that she did, apparently. I've been quite cautious about who I tell. Considering the possibility that I could choose to continue our relationship. Already, my family isn't exactly her fan base. And let's just say it wouldn't look good if they found out. However, there is a significant part of me that wants I could just shout about all of this from the highest place on earth. My emotions are all over the place right now, rather than feeling like I have to hide everything. Like an unlidded high-speed mixer. Attempting to choose which of the numerous emotions that are occurring at once to pay attention to is like attempting to grab smoke with your bare hands. I suppose that posting all of this here is a combination of venting and requesting some advice or insight from someone who has experienced similar situations, or even simply has an outside viewpoint. I understand that no one else can make this call for me, but I would really appreciate any assistance in sorting out this enormous emotional maze. Anybody who takes the time to comment is greatly appreciated in advance. In the third story, my sister has a 7-year-old child who occasionally still rocks diapers. He has his moments, but it's not like this all the time. Additionally, he has autism, which likely contributes to the diaper issue. I have a small group of my own, with a 9-year-old at the head of the pack and 2 munchkins at 2 and 4 in the rear. My sister and her young son will be staying with us for a while. A fire that occurred a few floors up from her apartment has left it somewhat disorganized. Additionally, they discovered some gnarly black mold growing nearby, and it's so hot outside right now, man. My husband went all out last summer and installed this enormous pool in our backyard. With all the kids coming and going to cool off here, it's as if we've become the local hotspot. Their parents are also pretty amazing, helping to maintain the appearance of our yard and occasionally grilling a lot. There have been times when my sister and I have disagreed about me nursing close to her son, or she has made strange requests for his meals. However, we resolved all of that. This is where things start to get a little sticky. Since my nephew has recently returned to wearing diapers, my sister has decided that our home should be off limits until he is fully committed to the underwear lifestyle once more. It didn't sit well with me. She could just keep him hanging out upstairs if she's that concerned about him feeling ashamed. All of these youngsters should not be kept within, away from the pool, because it is just too hot. They were able to enjoy themselves without turning into puddles. My sister is upset because her son feels excluded, particularly because he is unable to play with his cousins. Here's the problem, though. I can't prioritize one child's needs over the enjoyment and security of every other child, can I? She keeps saying that I should make special preparations for him and that I'm not being understanding enough. But I'm like, hold up, he's not my kid. And it's not like the other kids are going to make a big deal over his diaper situation. She's pretty upset with me. And my husband's kind of thinking maybe we could close off the pool for just family for a day or so. Makes me wonder, am I being unreasonable here? Story for my sister, who's 35, and she kind of sees herself as this top-notch housewife. She's got a couple of kids who are still in middle school, and she's all about the stay-at-home mom life, caring after them and her 5 dogs. Her spouse brings home the bacon, so she's entirely focused to managing the house, cooking up dinners, looking after the kids. You know, all that house stuff. Now, the thing my sister is very proud of is her cooking. She's always trying out new dishes and gets a big joy out of cooking for other persons. But here's the kicker. She's not exactly the culinary genius she believes she is. Plus, her kitchen habits are, let's just say, not quite up to code. We quote re-talking hair everywhere because she never ties it back. Hands that don't see the sink as much as they should. Oh, and the dogs are essentially a member of the culinary staff. Our family never stops talking about how delicious her cuisine is. But to be honest, I get shivers just thinking about how it's prepared. I've grown very adept at avoiding dinner invitations by claiming that I'm too busy with work or that I'm not hungry, which isn't entirely false. Since I work a very demanding job. To honor her husband's significant career advancement, she hosts a dinner party this one time. It's also one of those situations where it's simply impossible to say no. Because of the open plan design of their space, the kitchen and dining area are essentially one large room. As a result, I was able to see the entire cooking demonstration from my position at the table, and wow, it was amazing. She was wearing this enormous knit sweater while cooking, and her hair was loose and everywhere. However, things worsen. In the kitchen, I saw her licking her fingers, scratching them quickly, and then petting her dachshund. She throws the dog directly onto the counter next to the cutting board to get something, and the dog begins devouring the hamburger meat she left out, just when I thought I had seen it all. I spent the entire evening trying not to appear like I was about to lose my appetizer because I was so grossed out, but I clearly didn't touch my food and instead focused on chit-chat. However, my sister was aware of it and asked me the big question, "Why aren't you eating?" When she saw that I was only moving my food around rather than actually eating. I initially attempted to avoid it by making lighthearted excuses like, "Oh, I'm just not feeling all that hungry," etc. But after a while, the truth just sort of came out, and I had to tell her the truth. I politely informed her that her cooking style is a little disgusting. We're not exactly talking about clean cooking here, not to be unkind. I brought up the entire incident in which she dipped her fingers into the meal without first cleaning them and let her hair fly everywhere. That really got to me. My sister was really shocked. She told me how hard she works on these dinners and broke down in tears at that same moment. I was calling them dirty, and here I was. She even hinted that perhaps my jealousy stemmed from the fact that I don't have a family of my own to provide for. I kind of lost my patience at that point and informed her that I was done talking to her and that I would not be eating because I'm traveling alone without children. I simply left her since it made me uneasy. However, her spouse didn't accept it. All night, they flooded my phone with messages informing me that I was completely out of line, making a big deal out of nothing and saying that I truly offended them over the food problem. They said that the meal was good and that no hair tasted fantastic, but I never tried it. So how could I know? She asked me directly why I wasn't eating, and I gave her the truth to put the record right. Yes, I feel horrible for upsetting her. There were only the three of us, my sister, her husband, and I, not even a large family meal. Now that I'm sitting here, I'm wondering whether stating my truth made me the bad person. The final tale. I didn't help my sister with her ill children while she brought her husband to the emergency room. Am I the jerk? My sister is 30 years old. And she and her husband have 5 children. Me? At 22, I have no interest in the child scene at all. For example, I just don't enjoy spending time with children. For the most part, I avoid my nieces and nephews, and I choose to do so. I don't mind at all. Here's the drama though. All 7 members of the family contracted the coronavirus, which is difficult because it has been affecting them severely for a week. Her spouse became quite ill, became dangerously dehydrated, and had to be taken to the emergency room. In an attempt to get me to watch their 5 children while she abducted him, my sister phones me. "No way," I said, and advised her to contact her mother-in-law for assistance or call an ambulance. I thought their plan sounded good. She informs me that they are unable to pay for an ambulance and that she does not wish to bother her mother-in-law. That made me question why she was okay with me having 5 ill children. However, she believes it is excessive to ask her mother-in-law for a lift. She said that she too needed a break since she was feeling down. I simply hung up and carried on with my day since I couldn't stand it any longer. Suddenly, my mother, who lives far away, telephones me in a rage and tells me that I should have volunteered to watch my sister's children. Come on though, that question is very out there. I've never changed a diaper or even watched a child before. 3 of the 5 sick children are still in diapers. How am I meant to manage them? After the husband was eventually taken to the emergency room by the mother-in-law, my sister is now telling everyone that I'm the worst. Here quote, the problem though, she didn't support me when I needed it, and after she had her children, we hardly ever speak. Similar to the time I moved into my college residence hall, since she hasn't been there for the little things, I'm sitting here wondering why I should be required to step in and help with such a big favor. Is it truly my fault that I declined to care my sister's children? Story 3. Let My Deadbeat Brother and His Pregnant Wife Stay is the title of this tale. She now wants me to move out of my own house. Hello everyone. Remember to click the subscribe button if you like these stories and would like to help the channel. It enables me to provide you with even more fantastic material like this. Let's begin the video now. OP begins by stating that I inherited the family house when my mother passed away 5 years ago. It quote a nice neighborhood home with 3 bedrooms. And to be honest, ever since I returned, it has been my haven. Additionally, I received a sizable inheritance that has saved my life. I was able to make some changes to make the property seem like mine without having to worry about a mortgage. It also has a lot of sentimental importance because it's the house where I grew up. After that, I wish I could claim that everything in my life was ideal. However, things quickly became chaotic, primarily due to Blake, my half-brother. Despite having the same father, Blake and I are quite different individuals. He is the kind of person who can't hold down a job for more than a few months at a time, always finds a reason why things don't go as planned. He switches between girlfriends as if it were a pastime. This is how he has always been since I can remember. A few years prior, our father had died. Blake and his mother used that as justification to allow his life to get out of control. Occasionally, he would contact me and tell me a fresh sob tale about how unfair life was. And since, well, he's family, I would always try to be encouraging. About a year and a half ago, things started to change. Blake's failure to pay rent resulted in his eviction from his residence. In a panic, he contacted me and said he needed help and had nowhere to go. I was apprehensive at first. I was aware of Blake's methods. If I allowed him to, he would exploit my generosity. He then gave me the guilt trip, though. All I have left is you. Mom would want you to assist me if she were still here. He wasn't wrong, which is why that one hurt. Regardless of Blake's misbehavior, Mom always made an effort to keep us close, so I gave in. He could remain with me for a little while till he recovered, I informed him. A huge error. Blake made himself at home right away, after moving in with just a few things. It wasn't too horrible at first. He behaved himself well, most likely because he was afraid of being expelled. To my surprise, he even pitched in around the house a little. However, the fissures became apparent as the weeks stretched into months. Blake's brief visit became a long-term agreement. He wasn't helping with expenses, he wasn't paying rent, and he wasn't even looking for work. He always had an excuse when I brought it up. No one is hiring at the moment, but I'm looking. Or perhaps I simply need a bit more time to clear my mind. He was, however, spending the most of his days with his pals, playing video games or watching TV. I ought to have ejected him at that moment, but I refrained from doing so. I kept telling myself that he would ultimately get himself together. In addition, the thought of abandoning my sole family made me feel bad. Then Blake acquired Jenna as a new girlfriend. At first I didn't give it much thought since, to be honest, Blake constantly had a new girlfriend. This one, however, was unique. Compared to the others, she stayed longer. She was almost living at my place before I even realized it. She was always using my utilities, eating my food, and acting as like she owned the home. I didn't say anything since I didn't want to create an argument, even if it was annoying. When Jenna became pregnant, things became more heated. One night, Blake contacted me in a panic and broke the news to me. I didn't know how to respond. On the one hand, I was pleased for him, as perhaps this would be the catalyst for his maturation. However, Blake could hardly care for himself, much less a baby, so I was concerned. I was at a loss for words when Blake informed me that he and Jenna were getting married. It seemed hurried. Blake hadn't exactly been the model of a solid relationship, and they had only been dating for a few months. However, he maintained that it was the best course of action for the infant. Since it really wasn't my business, I didn't protest. If he believed that Jenna's marriage would improve the situation, who was I to disagree? The ceremony was brief and unimportant. A courthouse incident involving a few friends as witnesses. It stung a little that I wasn't even invited, but I kept my composure. Later that day, Blake and Jenna arrived at the house beaming like lottery winners. Now that they were married, Blake asked if Jenna could live there permanently. They would need the extra space for all the things that come with having a child, he said, and it would be better for the baby. I hesitated at first. Even though my house wasn't particularly small, having a pregnant person living there would make it much more so. In addition, Jenna had already been making fun of me. Although she wasn't particularly impolite at the time, she had a certain aura, as if she believed she was superior to me. Blake was family though, and I didn't want to be the villain who turned down assistance. I said yes. That was the second error. After Jenna moved in formally a few days later, things began to change right away. She behaved as though she was the owner. She would reorganize items in the kitchen, scatter her belongings throughout the living room, and gripe about my housekeeping. She even remarked sarcastically that my furniture was a little out of style. I initially attempted to ignore it. I assumed she was simply getting used to her new surroundings and perhaps feeling a bit uncomfortable. But her attitude only got worse. She started making demands, like asking me to cook dinner for her and Blake, or run errands for her because she was too tired. I was already letting them live in my house rent-free, and now I was expected to be their personal chef and delivery service. The worst part was how she treated me. Jenna had this way of talking down to me like I was some kid who didn't know how to run a household. She'd make passive-aggressive comments about how things would be so much better once the baby arrived, implying that my house wasn't good enough for them. Blake, of course, didn't see a problem. Whenever I brought it up, he'd shrug and say, "She's pregnant, man. Cut her some slack." That excuse was starting to wear thin. Then came the big announcement. One evening, Jenna sat me down like she was ready to have a serious chat. I figured she was going to apologize for how she'd been acting, or maybe talk about their plans for moving out once the baby arrived. But no, she had something different in mind. "We've been chatting," she added, staring at Blake, who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "And with the baby approaching, we think it's better if you locate somewhere else to live." I gazed at her, waiting for the joke, but it never came. "Excuse me," I murmured, trying to retain my calm. "Well, she said, "it's only that we need the space. It's going to be incredibly strange having you here with a newborn. Don't you think it would be better for everyone if you found your own place?" What I was hearing was unbelievable. "This is my home, Jenna." I spoke as calmly as possible. As if the words didn't make sense, she blinked. "Yes, but it's his too since Blake claimed it was inherited. And it is also mine because we are married. Living with your husband's brother and a newborn is simply strange, you know." It dawned on me then. She believed the home belonged to Blake. I looked at him, expecting him to intervene and chastise her, but he only sat there without making eye contact. "This home is not owned by Blake." Glancing back at Jenna, I said, "Yes, I do. When my mother died, I inherited it. I live with you two, not the other way around." Jenna's cheeks flushed. "What are you discussing?" "She lost her temper," Blake stated. "Blake told a falsehood. I cut you off. I own this house. Blake and you are not entitled to it." Blake eventually whispered as she glanced at him. "I told the truth. I just failed to correct her." Jenna was silent for a moment. She got up and hurried to their room, slamming the door behind her. For several minutes, I sat there attempting to comprehend what had just transpired. It seemed unbelievable to me that Blake had allowed her to think the home belonged to him. What did he intend to do? To simply perpetuate the deception indefinitely? I hoped things would calm down once Jenna hurried off to their room. Since they had been living off of my kindness the entire time, I figured she simply needed some time to come to terms with the idea that Blake didn't actually own the house. However, no, I was completely wrong. I heard shouts when I woke up the following morning. Blake and Jenna were already working together. They spoke loudly enough to be heard over the walls. I initially made an effort to ignore it. They had argued before, and I didn't think it would be the last time. Then I heard my name, though. How come you would allow me to think? Blake, the home was yours. How humiliating is this, do you realize? I was essentially termed a freeloader by your brother. Jenna yelled. Blake's reaction was unclear to me, but whatever he said simply made her more irate. She almost bumped into me in the hallway as she hurried out of their room, slamming the door behind her. Good morning, I remarked clumsily, attempting to defuse the situation. Jenna gave me a fierce look. I didn't need to be so humiliated by you, Dot. You might have simply accepted it. I was blown away. Make you feel ashamed? This is my home, Jenna. Did you really believe you had the authority to evict me from my own house? Blake, however, gave the impression that the mansion belonged to him. She lost her temper. How could I have known? I inhaled deeply while attempting to maintain my composure. I apologize if this was unexpected, but the truth is that Blake is not the owner of this house. Yes, I do. Furthermore, I refuse to listen to anyone, whether they are family or not, tell me that I must leave my house. She didn't answer. She simply said something and entered the kitchen. As she prepared breakfast, I could hear her banging cabinets, so I decided to give her some room. The drama didn't end there, though. Blake came to speak with me later that night. He was shifting his weight from one foot to the other, as if he were a child about to confess to smashing a window, and I could see he was uneasy. He began, "Hey man, we must discuss what transpired." I leaned against the doorframe with my arms crossed. "Proceed, Dot," he continued, stroking the back of his neck. "So Jenna's pretty upset. Perhaps you might have handled things differently, in my opinion." "Did you handle things differently? Are you serious, Blake?" "She attempted to evict me from my own home." "Yes, but it wasn't necessary for you to inform her that way." He quarreled. "You may have just given her time to reflect. What should she think? That this location is yours? That she is entitled to it in some way? I won't lie to you, Blake. To keep your pride intact, you two must remember that this is my home." Blake remained silent despite his irritated expression. He simply left, grumbling something about how I was making things more difficult than they had to be. Jenna packed her bags and went to be with her mother that evening. She didn't bid farewell, didn't provide an explanation, just left through the door. I could see Blake was angry, but he didn't pursue her. He sulked in the living room for the remainder of the evening, paging through the TV's stations without really viewing anything. The situation worsened the following day. Blake wasn't afraid to let me know that he was still plainly thinking about the entire thing. As I entered the kitchen for breakfast, he replied, "You know, this is all your fault." I arched an eyebrow. "I'm to blame. How can I blame this?" "Blake, none of this would have occurred if you had simply gone along with it. Everything would have been okay if Jenna hadn't gone. What I was hearing was unbelievable. Blake, you gave your wife the impression that this house is yours. You're upset with me for telling her the truth after you lied to her. It's your fault, not mine." Blake gave an eye roll. "Man, you're so self-centered. The only person you care about is yourself. For me, that was the final straw. Selfish. You have been living here for more than a year without paying any rent. Blake. You're calling me selfish after I've paid your expenses and put up with your nonsense. You're amazing." He had nothing to say about that. Just picked up his coffee and resumed his pouting. I had hoped that Blake would be awakened by the altercation with Jenna, but he doubled down instead. A few days later, he brought a fresh argument to me. With his arms crossed as if he were going to establish the law, he declared, "I've been living here for more than a year. You know, that gives me some rights." I gazed at him, attempting to comprehend his words. "True, Blake? What are you discussing?" He responded smugly, "You can't just kick me out legally. Even though I'm not paying rent, I've lived here long enough to be regarded as a renter. You can't force me to go." I was astounded by the boldness. "So let me clarify this. After more than a year of freeloading in my home, do you suddenly believe you have the right to remain here against my wishes?" He gave a shrug. "All I'm suggesting is that you might want to reconsider your attempt to expel me." At that point, I became acutely aware of Blake's derangement. He obviously didn't appreciate anything I'd done for him, and he wasn't going to go alone. I would play this game with him if he wanted to, but according to my terms. After Blake's brief "I have rights" speech, I understood that this would not be settled amicably. I was tired of having him walk all over me, and he was sinking his heels in Dot. Since he had been residing there for more than a year, he was legally correct according to my study on tenant legislation. I could not just tell him to go. To remove him, I had to follow the correct legal procedures. It seemed absurd. I lived here. I had to go through a lot to get my freeloading half-brother out of the house where I grew up. However, that's okay if that's what it took. The next day, I met down with Blake to make one more attempt to settle the matter without going to court. I told Blake that this was no longer working. You must leave. I'll let you work things out for a while. However, I can't continue to give you free rent. A baby is on the way to you. Get your act together, please. He only chuckled. What am I meant to do? I lack the funds to move to a different location. Furthermore, Jenna will not permit me to live with her mother indefinitely. My brother is you. You're meant to assist me. For more than a year, I have been your helper. I fired back. When you had nowhere else to go, I provided you with a place to stay. But you've been taking advantage of me instead of using that time to get back on your feet. I am no longer able to do it. Blake gave an eye roll. Man, whatever. In any case, you cannot expel me. Remember that I have rights. Even though my blood was boiling, I maintained my composure. All right, I will go through the legal procedure if that is your preferred course of action. But you're going somewhere anyway. I started the eviction procedure by filing the necessary paperwork that evening. I had no option except to evict my own brother, which felt strange. To make sure everything was in order, I also contacted a lawyer. I didn't want to take the chance that Blake would find a way to remain longer. Blake was incensed when he learned. He said that I had betrayed him, was cold-hearted, and didn't care about family. He screamed, "You're throwing me out when I'm going to give birth. What sort of individual does that?" I refused to fall for the ruse. What sort of person exploits their brother's generosity and then attempts to argue that they are entitled to remain in his home for free? I retaliated, and the weeks that followed were terrible. Blake alternated between being openly hostile and guilt-tripping me. He would be shouting about how I was ruining his life one moment, then apologizing and promising to try harder the next. But I stood my ground. I would no longer allow him to control me. When Jenna arrived one evening, it was a game-changer. Since the battle, she had been staying at her mother's house, but now that she was back, she wasn't pleased. "Are you aware of the harm you are causing to my family?" As soon as she entered, she lost her temper. Blake became anxious. "I'm under a lot of stress. And with a kid on the way, this is the last thing we need. Would you mind letting us remain till we work things out?" I inhaled deeply. "I know this is a difficult circumstance, but I've been more than understanding, Jenna. You've both been taking advantage of me. Even though I've given you plenty of time to sort your lives out, I can't continue to provide for you on my own. Exploiting you." She laughed. "We are related. That's the role of family. They support one another. Family members don't pretend to be entitled to things that aren't theirs or tell lies. This is my house and I've made my decision," I stated firmly. "You've got 2 weeks to solve the problem." Jenna had nothing to say about that. She simply shook her head, gathered her belongings, and departed once more. Naturally, Blake was incensed upon learning of the 2-week notice. "This is what you're actually doing," he shouted. "My pregnant wife and I are being thrown out on the street by you. Blake, you have more than a year to organize your life." "This isn't my fault," I said. "You own it. You are currently coping with the repercussions of your poor decisions." Slamming the door behind him, he walked out and stayed in his room all night, moping. Blake made every effort to persuade me to reconsider throughout the course of the following several days. To guilt-trip me, he called up family members and said that I had abandoned him during his time of need. He even had a few people contact me and accuse me of being unjust. But I didn't back down. I had treated Blake fairly, and it was time for him to mature. I eventually lost tolerance after weeks of back-and-forth discussions and guilt trips. Blake had made it apparent that he had no intention of leaving voluntarily, and I wasn't going to allow him to intimidate me into giving in. So I took the necessary action. I presented a proper legal notice to him. The choice wasn't simple. There are several reasons why it feels bad to evict your own brother. But my hand was pushed by Blake. I informed him that he had 2 weeks to leave the property lawfully. I would have to take the matter to court if he didn't, and I was just not interested in doing it. He laughed when I gave him the notice. "Are you really doing this? Are you dismissing your own brother?" "Indeed, Blake." I spoke aggressively. I've given you many opportunities to change things, but all you've done is take advantage of me. I've put a lot of effort into maintaining this house because it's my home. You cannot simply enter here, assert your rights, and expect me to comply." He tossed the crumpled paper on the ground. "You quote amazing. Are you even interested in family?" "About my child. What should I do at this point?" I returned the paper to him after picking it up. "Blake, figure it out. You will soon become a parent. Now is the time to behave like one." The following 2 weeks were stressful. The majority of Blake's time was spent moping loudly to anybody who would listen or pouting in his room. He even made an attempt to get Jenna back inside. But I quickly put an end to that. "Blake, she's not going back in. Finding a place of your own should be your top priority." He used every tactic in the book to postpone the inevitable, of course. He contacted family members to disparage me, claiming that I was abandoning him and his expectant wife. Some of them tried to use guilt trips to get me to let him remain. "He is your sibling, according to one of my aunts. You cannot simply leave him in this manner." I gently described the circumstances, including Blake's refusal to accept responsibility for his life, his deception to Jenna about owning the property, and the fact that he had been living rent-free for more than a year. I informed her that I had done more than enough for him. You have to draw the line at some point. The amusing part was that not a single member of the family offered to take him in. They were quick to condemn me, yet slow to provide assistance. Normal. Blake's desperation increased as the deadline drew near. He began to make unfulfillable promises. He pleaded, "Just give me a little more time. I'll begin making rent payments. I'll find employment. Man, I'll do anything you want." I gave a headshake. "Blake, you've been saying it for more than a year. I have finished waiting. The notification is still in effect. You can depart at the end of the week." To be honest, I wasn't sure whether he would depart when the last day came. There was a part of me that thought he would dig his heels and make me take him to court. I was shocked when he began packing, though. It was far from elegant. He cursed beneath his breath while he tossed his belongings into trash bags. At least he was going somewhere. Blake had left by the evening. He didn't bid farewell, didn't even turn around when he left, and he didn't thank me for letting him stay. He simply walked away. Like a whiny adolescent, he slammed the door behind him. For the first time in more than a year, he departed, and the home felt oddly quiet. My house was returned. No more drama, disagreements, or freeloading. I felt a sense of relief. As much as Blake had irritated me, it was also bittersweet. He remained my brother. I wasn't sure whether we would ever be able to mend our friendship after this, and kicking him out seemed like severing ties. I learned via rumors a few weeks later that Blake and Jenna were lodging with one of her family members. I hope that arrangement serves as a wake-up call for them, but I'm not sure how long it will endure. They must organize their life. Scott, the last post. Since Blake moved out of my house approximately a year ago, things have been calm. It's intentional that I haven't heard anything directly from him. The day he departed, I blocked him on everything. Naturally, though. News spreads quickly in our family, particularly when it involves drama. I have received multiple communications from family members, after I ejected him apparently. Jenna and Blake moved in with one of her family members. It was a short-lived arrangement. I've heard that Jenna became frustrated with Blake's lack of drive and his unwillingness to assume the role of husband or soon-to-be parent. When the family isn't paying for it, I suppose freeloading doesn't go down well. A few months after they left my house, the baby was born, admittedly a tiny girl. I have sympathy for my niece. Being born into this chaos was not anything she desired. Furthermore, I doubt she has much stability in her life given Blake and Jenna. In any case, Jenna's divorce filing was the major drama. It turns out that once the baby was born, Blake did not suddenly become a responsible adult. I realize it's shocking. He was still blaming everyone else for his difficulties, was unable to hold down a job, and seldom assisted with the baby. When Jenna had had enough, she threw him out. According to what I've been informed, Blake is couch hopping once more while she stays with her mother and concentrates on raising their baby. He reportedly made an unsuccessful attempt to move back in with one of his former girlfriends. Blake made an attempt to contact me a few months back. On one of my social media sites, I received a message request. After I blocked his previous profile, He must have created a new one. It was the same message. Blake is a moron. Guilt tripping, long-winded and replete with justifications. He said that he wanted to make amends since he missed his older brother. He said he was going through a difficult time and requested if he could stay with me once more, although temporarily, after blaming Jenna for their divorce. I didn't answer at all. I instantly banned the new account. Still, he made an effort despite that. He tried to reach me by sending messages through several accounts throughout the course of the following few weeks. They were all more desperate. I've heard it all before, yet he said things like, "You're the only family I have left, and I swear I'll change this time." Blake remains the same. He simply keeps coming up with new methods to bring others down with him. When one of our relatives phoned me, it was the last straw. Blake had apparently been sobbing to them about how I had deserted him when he was in need. They questioned me about why I couldn't simply give him another opportunity. "He is your sibling." As if that excused everything, they said. I explained everything to them. I explained to them that I had given Blake more than a year to straighten out, that he had lied about owning my property, that he had allowed Jenna to attempt to evict me from my own house, and that he had shown no gratitude for everything that I had done for him. For Blake, I've done more than enough. I advised them to take him in if they felt he deserved another shot. However, I'm finished. That instantly silenced them. It's funny how quickly people advise you to forget and forgive, but they are completely absent when it comes to taking responsibility for themselves. The finest thing I've done in a long time was to block Blake. I feel like I can finally focus on myself without being pulled down by the drama of others for the first time in years. Do I regret interrupting him? To be honest, not at all. Blake is currently coping with the repercussions of his decisions. He just took advantage of me because I gave him more opportunities than he merited. Even if someone is family, you have to stop allowing them to take advantage of you eventually. Regarding Jenna, I also don't feel sorry for her. She made her share of entitled demands when she lived in my home, so she wasn't exactly a saint. However, when it became apparent that Blake would not change, she at least had the wisdom to leave him. For the sake of my niece, I hope Jenna gets her act together and provides the stability that young girl needs. That concludes the latest version. Blake is still Blake, unemployed, aimless, and pointing the finger at others for his troubles. He has made several attempts to contact me, but I have blocked him each time. Just once. I will no longer serve as his safety net. Maybe I'll change my mind if he ever makes a real change in his life. However, I'm staying away till then. You don't have enough time to waste on those who don't appreciate you or your efforts. I'm simply going to enjoy my peaceful, drama-free home and put myself first for the time being. I believe I've earned it after everything I've been through.